זה נתחיל. בסדר. אז שלום לכולם. Good afternoon to our department seminar at the Jewish department at the Bar-Ilan University. Today we are honored to host Dóra Pataricza from Hungary, whose Jewish roots are in Szeged. She is a postdoctoral researcher in history who has worked on projects aiming to index, catalog, and digitize the archive of the Szeged Jewish community. Dora is currently the initiator and director of the collaborative project on the Löw legacy, carried out in a partnership with the National Library of Israel, the Jewish Theological Seminary, University of Jewish Studies, and the Hungarian Jewish Museum and Archives. She is the editor of Immanuel Löw's essay The Kiss, forthcoming in 2025, and co-editor of a collected volume on Immanuel Löw to be published in 2026. In 2021, she received the Immanuel Löw Award from the Szeged Jewish community, and today she will give a lecture about the beautiful Szeged New Synagogue through Archival Sources. So please, Dora, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hanukkah Sameach to everyone, and thank you, Marianne, for inviting me. When one imagines the archives of a currently small provincial Jewish community, the expectations are often modest. Dusty folders, faded correspondence, perhaps a few ritual records. But what emerges in reality can be far more surprising. In my own research since 2017, I have uncovered the myth behind the pork salami developed by a Jew. I discovered the mistakes linked to a window renovation, a parochet woven with falsified gold thread, dealt extensively with the only synagogue garden of the world, and helped revive an inaugurational synagogue march played on an organ. None of these are what one would predict to find, yet all of them are connected to the hidden richness of communal memory preserved in the archives. I have been doing research on Szeged for a decade now because of my Jewish ancestry. My great-great-grandfather, Vilmos Fuchs, was the principal of the Szeged Jewish Elementary School and the second Hazan in the New Synagogue, the building that I'm doing research on and that my talk today is focused on. Szeged, you can see Szeged here in the southern Hungary, close to the Serbian and the Romanian border, next to the Tisza River, and currently is the third biggest city in Hungary. Szeged, from the second half of the 19th century, Szeged became a focal point of neologue or progressive Judaism, especially after the Jewish Congress of 1868. The city's Jewish elite was largely assimilated, and the Löw rabbis played a central role in shaping a modern religious and cultural profile. Another major turning point was the relocation of the University of Kolozsvár to Szeged in the 1920s, which transformed the city into a university center and stimulated immigration. Within this changing urban context, the Jewish population of Szeged made significant contribution to science, culture, finance, architecture, and industry. These processes were closely linked to the city's broader transformation from an agrarian town into a modern scientific and cultural center. One example that I'm often giving is the pig salami, which you can see on the picture. Of course, it's made of pork, but it was invented by a local Szeged Jew, Mark Pick, who traveled in Italy, got a recipe of salami. He realized that the climate in Szeged, due to the closeness of the Tisza River, is excellent to produce salami. So he was able to make a world-famous product, which is sold all over the world. I guess it's not sold in Israel, but you can check. But according to oral history, according to his granddaughter, Vera Pick, who is luckily still alive over the age of 90, he never tasted his own product because he was a neologue Jew. So he was able to produce the product, but he didn't taste it because even according to neology, it's non-kosher, it's treif. And then Szeged, the Szeged Jewish community in its heyday had 7,000 members in the beginning of the 1920s. Let's talk about the synagogues now. Between 1840 and 43, the Lipovsky brothers, two non-Jewish architects, designed an extensive classicist-style synagogue on the plot at Hajnóci Street 12. The building, which got to be called the Old Synagogue after the new one was built, today functions as a theater. The former synagogue was fitting 400 men and 260 women, and it was headed by Chief Rabbi Lipót Löw after 1850 until his death in 1875, who gave his speeches in Hungarian as an essential step in his reform efforts. Here you can see a picture of the women's gallery. And then on March 12th in 1879, Szeged was devastated by a major flood of the river Tisza. Of nearly 6,000 houses in the city, only 265 remained intact. The destruction reshaped the urban fabric and made large-scale reconstruction unavoidable. On this picture, you can see the old synagogue, and luckily it wasn't destroyed, but as I said, the whole thing had to be rebuilt, and it gave an excellent. Let me talk about my most important source. The Szeged Jewish Community's archives contain approximately 25 linear meters of documents. The collection includes vital records, conscription lists, family papers, association files, testaments, obituaries, speeches, censuses, school records, maps, diaries, cemetery registers, ritual textiles, and vital registers of nearby Jewish communities. The main challenges have been preservation, cataloging, and accessibility, and these were addressed through a digitization project carried out in 2018 and 19, which resulted in systematic indexing and a searchable online database, which is available at szegedjewisharchive.org. Here you can see some before and after pictures, and you can see the striking difference. So right now our archive can be used, very user-friendly and really nicely organized archive. Also, it's one of the very, very few Jewish archives that exist in the Hungarian countryside. We had another project between 2020 and 25, which aimed to preserve and conserve the synagogue textiles. And we have also had some selected pieces restored and the original architectural plans for the future generations. It was launched in 2020, marking both the 160th anniversary of Baumhorn's birth, Lipót Baumhorn's birth, and the 120th anniversary of the synagogue's construction. The work was carried out in partnership with the Hungarian Museum of Architecture and the Monument Documentation Protection Center. The project resulted in exhibitions in Szeged and Budapest, as well as a traveling exhibition presented at 11 locations in 7 different languages. Here, I'd like to show you some pictures of the paper restorations. Some of these are the implementation drawings of the building of the synagogue. So you can see that we have amazing sources. And here you can see the inaugural parochet. On the left-hand side, you can see it before the restoration. It's the curtain of the Holy Ark, which was designed by Lipót Baumhorn himself, echoing the same floral and symbolic motifs as the synagogue, as you'll see later. The Torah mantle, also dating from 1903, had severely deteriorated by the time it was restored in 2020 by the Szeged Jewish community. The timing of the restoration was dramatic. Just as the pandemic, the COVID began, a retired local textile conservator, Eva Katkó-Bagi, rushed through all the bridal and fabric shops of Szeged, and she was buying silk, velvet, buttons, and sparkling stones. And then during the lockdown, she worked at home, restoring the textiles with passion and an incredible motivation. And she expressed several times her gratitude for being entrusted with this task at the very end of her professional life. And I'm going to tell you more about these parochets a little bit later. Immanuel Löw, the chief rabbi of Szeged, was perhaps the most important neologue rabbi and scholar of his time. He was not only significant as a rabbi, but also as an academic in various fields. In 1879, he submitted his doctoral thesis on plant names in Aramaic, for which he received his PhD in Leipzig. In the previous year in Berlin, he was ordained as a rabbi and started his work in Szeged, where he officiated until his deportation in 1944. Immanuel Löw continued his father's work and became a leading figure of liberal Judaism in Hungary. In 1920, he was imprisoned for 13 months for condemning the White Terror and Admiral Horthy, during which he worked on his major work, Die Flora der Juden, on plants in Jewish sources. In 1927, he joined Hungary's upper house, representing the neologue community, and remained Szeged's rabbi for life, turning down offers from London, Vienna, and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Deported at over 90 in 1944, thanks to efforts of Rezső Kastner, later known as Israel Kastner in Israel, and the Zionist rescue organizations, he was taken off the train in Budapest, but died soon after. In 1947, the Szeged Jewish community reburied him beside his father. Here you see him, which is preserved in Israel at the National Library of Israel. To show you his immense knowledge, with which he was able to combine languages and natural sciences, I show you a page of his work in German with ancient Greek, Arabic, Hebrew, and Syriac. Die Flora der Juden is a monumental 4-volume work of over 2,600 pages, one of the most detailed botanical studies ever produced in Jewish scholarship. Drawing on his expertise in languages, rabbinic texts, and modern botany, Rabbi Immanuel Löw examined every plant mentioned in Jewish sources, from the Torah and the Talmud to medieval commentaries and Yiddish folklore. He placed these plants within Carl von Linné's scientific system, tracing their names, symbolism, and practical uses in daily and religious life, from law and folklore to medicine and art. Löw identified altogether 117 biblical and 320 Tannaitic plant names, noting their linguistic origins. The following video is from a documentary made in 2002 about Rabbi Immanuel Löw, featuring the words of Professor Yaakov Zussman of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, one of the leading experts on Die Flora der Juden. The film is titled Immanuel Löw, Who Understood the Language of Plants, and I'd like to show you a 1-minute excerpt of this.
Van rengeteg növényeknek a neve, gyümölcsöknek, zöldségeknek, fáknak, virágoknak, százával, ezrével. Senki se tudta pontosan, hogy mi az. Ő volt az első, aki tudományosan kikutatta, és tudta mondani, ez az, és ez az. Tulajdonképpen a mai napi modern Héberbe, hogy nevezzük ezeket a növényeket ilyen néven, vagy olyan néven, az mind a Lövtől származik. De nem csak az. Ő volt majdnem az első, aki rájött, hogy a talmudi irodalom, ami egy óriási irodalom, ahogy mi hozzánk eljutott a nyomtatott kiadásokba, különösen idegen neveket, amit nem ismertek középkorba, azok kezdtek hozzánk nagyon rossz helyzetben. Tele van hibákkal. Minden kifejezést megtalálni, hol fordul elő, és megnézni, hogy néz az ki a kéziratokban. És elhatározni, hogy melyik forma az az igazi forma, azt mindent előbb csinálom.
Let's get back to Szeged and how the new synagogue was designed in the late 1890s. Löw met Lipót Bamhorn at the inauguration of Bamhorn's first synagogue in Esztergom in northern Hungary in 1888. Lipót's son, Immanuel Löw, as the next chief rabbi, took an active part in constructing the new synagogue. Lipót Bamhorn, the most prolific synagogue architect in Europe, prepared plans for 26 synagogues, 22 of which were built in historical Hungary. He worked at the time of the Jewish assimilation in the late 19th, early 20th century. The domed, towered synagogues designed by him became the cityscape's defining elements. The commissions from the Jewish communities went together with orders from the city bourgeoisie, so he designed nearly 50 public buildings and tenement houses in 4 big cities, Timisoara, Szeged, Novi Sad, and Budapest. Here you can see the design that he submitted for the competition of for the design of the new synagogue of Szeged, submitted in 1899. Let's talk a few words about what Neolog really is and what a Neolog synagogue is. Neolog Judaism developed in 19th century Hungary as part of Jewish communal modernization. Its members initially defined themselves as a progressive group. The term Neolog was later applied by Orthodox critics. Neolog leaders did not see their program as theological reform. They understood changes in language, education, and synagogue design as cultural and civic adaptations rather than breaches of religious law. Conservatives, by contrast, treated these same issues as fully religious in nature. These differences became visible in synagogue architecture and practice. Neolog synagogues were conceived as urban landmarks, often with towers. The bima was placed at the front, an organ was introduced, women and men sat together, or the mechitza was not really high enough, and weddings were held inside the synagogue. I don't know how many of you have ever been to the Szeged New Synagogue, but I'm going to show you a 1-minute video soon. In 1903, the Jewish Community of Szeged inaugurated its new synagogue, the 2nd largest in Hungary and the 4th largest in Europe, and many would say, including me, that it's one of the most beautiful in the world. Designed by Lipót Bamhorn, Hungary's most prolific synagogue architect, it is also his most ornate creation. The true driving force, however, was Immanuel Löw, a scholar of international reputation, a botanist, and a charismatic, though at least based on what I can see in the documents, often meticulous and micromanaging leader. Löw inaugurated the synagogue and held sermons there, but that's not all. He also shaped its entire concept, from the symbolic decorative program and floral motifs to stained glass designs, ritual objects, and even the embroidery patterns of the ritual textiles. The interior decoration was intended to convey the faith and identity of the community, presenting elements of the Hebrew Bible. Above the Torah ark, visitors can read the bilingual inscription, "Love your neighbor as yourself," the first synagogue wall inscription in Hungarian, also given in Hebrew. And I'm going to show you now a 1-minute video of this wonderful building. When I want to illustrate how much Löw contributed to the building itself, I usually show this comparison. On the left, you see the synagogue of Novi Sad, a beautiful structure designed entirely by Lipót Bamhorn in 1907. On the right is the Szeged Synagogue, where virtually every square centimeter is decorated. It is filled with botanical motifs, leaves, flowers, fruits, and branches drawn from Jewish texts. This contrast makes Löw's roles visible. In Szeged, the rabbi shaped the entire visual and conceptual program of the entire building. Currently, based on the documents of the archive, we are writing the history, 120 years of the Szeged New Synagogue, together with Viktória Bányai and Ágnes Oszkó from the Hungarian Museum of Architecture and Monument Protection Documentation Center. I would like to begin the discussion of the synagogue's decoration with the windows. Our key sources are the architectural plans and letters from the synagogue's construction, mostly preserved in Szeged. One letter reveals that Löw originally wanted to inscribe the names of God on the ceiling, which you can see on the right-hand side. A plan later replaced by painted prayers showing how directly he shaped the decoration. He also designed the stained glass windows of the Jewish holidays, creating a botanical language of symbols and ritual objects. 10 large windows and 2 smaller ones above, together with the interior paintings, all used plans. What follows are examples showing how the archival material allows us to reconstruct Löw's role in shaping not only the windows, but the broader symbolic program of the synagogue. The most important element of the interior of the building is the internal glass dome, which symbolizes creation. Section 24 also states 24 hours a day. The dome is supported by 4 pillars. The pillars and the walls have symbolic meaning expressed by 4 Hebrew inscriptions and floral symbolism. The dome symbolizes also the created world with the display of the starry sky. The chief rabbi wanted to decorate the 24 articles with different plans according to the books of the Bible. Eventually, this program was simplified and only stylized. Poppy seed plant decoration was placed on the stained glass windows. And you can see the original plan on the right-hand side. There are 3 concepts in 4 words. The pillars of Judaism, according to Löw, and they are also the pillars of the building. Above the 4 pillars shines 4 inscriptions in Hebrew, the cornerstones of the Jewish religion's ethic, Torah, Avodah, and Gmilut Hasadim. So Torah, work or service, and loving acts of loving kindness. The cross-vaulted fields of the 4 porch corners in the southeast, the wild rose, Rubus Sanctus, is a symbol of the Torah. In the northeast, the Colossines, Citrulus Colossintis, symbolizes the books of the former prophets. In the northwest, the castor symbolizes the latter prophets. In the southwest, the walnut, Juglans regia, represents the writings, the final section of the Tanakh. By creating the painted windows of the synagogue, Immanuel Löw aimed to present the Jewish year. He made sketches for each of the windows, with the help of which glass painter Manó Róth, the brother of Miksa Róth, drew the cardboards needed for the construction. Here I'm showing you a comparison of the plan, which is the design, and what has been implemented, which Löw published in a booklet in 1903 with photographs, which you can see on the right-hand side. The different fields are indicated with different colors. So what you can see in red on the draft, on the design, is in red how it was implemented on the original windows. The first window in the southeast represents everyday life and weekday labor. Here it's written in the design that's hall, meaning that it's the everyday life. Because of the limited space on the glass, Löw could write the Hebrew inscription, which you can see here, only in abbreviated forms. Vekotz vedardar tov lamed, abbreviated from tatzmiach lach. Bezet apecha tav lamed, abbreviated for tochal lechem. Ve'achalta et ayin hei, abbreviated for et esef chasadeh. And these lines refer to the verses in Genesis that describe human labor by the sweat of one's brow, which Löw chose to symbolize weekday work. The sketch and the program booklet also precisely named the donors of the money for the window, who in this case were members of the family of the president of the community at that time. You can see these names here, Mrs. Rosa and Ilona, who was the daughter of the president. So Löw also kept traces of who is paying for which window. And this is what the windows currently look like. The windows are all framed by a double border. The outer of these, which Löw calls the Lili Hashmonean coin, is the same on all the windows of the synagogue. The silver shekels with the three-pointed decoration date from the 2nd and 1st century BCE and were used by the kings of the Hashmonean dynasty, also known as the Maccabees. The inner frames of the common windows were once decorated with 6 thorned thistles, onopordum in Latin, and a wheat thistle. In the middle, you can see the wooden plow, which was to be copied from the Zeitschrift des Deutschen Palästina Vereins. On the top part, the bowls for donation have been changed here, and they only depict the straps of the tefillin while the boxes are missing. Here I'm showing you a comparison. So this is what the windows looked like in 1903, and then you can see the colored photos of what they look like now. Why? Why are the windows now different than the original ones? For the Brook project on the synagogue, we wanted to speak with the woman who restored the stained glass windows in 1989, and recently in August we were able to locate and meet her. She still had all the documentation from that restoration, and her materials finally allowed us to understand what had happened in 1989. The windows had been damaged during the war, during the Shoah, and very likely it was deliberately. And in 1989, she did not have access, or she was not given enough help from the community to access the 1903 photographs or to the original construction plans. The restorer, who herself is not Jewish, had never seen a pair of tefillin before, and these windows must have been the most incomplete and the most damaged one. As a result, certain motifs have been reconstructed differently from the original design. For me, the main lesson is clear. The work of historians, archivists, and of course librarians is essential, especially during the restoration of a synagogue. On the ground floor, opposite the weekdays window, the first window in the northeast depicts the rituals of Shabbat. Its inscription quotes Lecha Dodi. The lower and upper panels show Shabbat objects with the song's text running between them, which you can see here. The frame follows the synagogue's general pattern, while the inner border is unique to Shabbat. Clove buds and olive branches appear on the sides, and Hebrew cantillation signs in the center. Above is the Shabbat candlestick, whose original still hangs in the synagogue, which is here. This window was funded by Immanuel Löw's mother, noted as Mama, which you can see here in the design, saying Mama, Mom, in his own handwriting, a sketch kept among his personal papers. Unfortunately, Immanuel Löw's mom, the widow of Rabbi Leopold Löw, did not live long enough to see the synagogue's dedication, as she passed away in August 1902. Here you can see a close-up of the same window with the community's silver Torah shield, which was made in 1852. And on the left-hand side, you can see the drawing of Immanuel Löw for Monoröd, the window designer, and he gave exact details of which field, which color. So based on design, we know what's supposed to be gold and what is supposed to be silver. On the right-hand side, you can see the same silver Torah shield, what it looks right now. Thank God it's also still in the possession of the Szeged Jewish community. And it was recently renovated, but the community didn't have enough money. So now it's only in silver, and there is no golden layer on it anymore. So what you can see on the window and what you can see on the design is what this object looked in reality 170 years ago. The inscription in the handwritten note above the Torah scroll states that the Kiddush cup comes from the Strauss collection. Strauss, an art collector, displayed his Judah treasures at the 1878 World's Fair in a unique hexagonal Kiddush cup, which you can see here, that Löw referred to as Strauss 10. So he just said that this Strauss, from the Strauss catalog, the object number 10 is supposed to be copied here. The left panel shows candles framed by apple blossom with a colorful braided candles and a Besamim spice holder. Based on Löw's design sketches, every window motif can be traced to its source, reflecting an extraordinary range of influences: Sephardi, Ashkenazi, Italian, ancient and medieval and modern, all interwoven with references to the flora and landscapes of the land of Israel. The music scores of the march that was played at the inauguration was also preserved, and recently we have revived this music. The only copy of this music score that I was able to locate was in the Danish National Library. It was composed by Ottokar Wöber, a Czech composer who lived in Szeged for some time in 1903. On the 120th anniversary of the inauguration, which was in 2023 May, a member of the community, a professor of music, agreed to learn to play this again, and she presented it again on the organ of the synagogue 120 years after it was played last time. And I would like to show you this little piece from this inaugural march. Okay, so this is something that you can only hear in a Hungarian synagogue, where in some of the synagogues there is an organ. Currently, as far as I know, there is a functioning organ only in Budapest and in Szeged. So this is also something very unique. Another case study that we have recently dealt with, and this is familiar to Zvi at least, with the help of documents of the archive. It was the final day of Sukkot on October 12, 1902. A really worried embroidery artisan, Joseph Sternberg, hurried into a Budapest telegraph office. He sent a terse, urgent message to Szeged, where 5 months earlier the magnificent Szeged New Synagogue was inaugurated. If this was an urgent WhatsApp message today, it would say all in capital letters. Only if today unused, meaning as it is only heavily used on the holidays, all items, meaning of the gold embroidery I supplied, are sent to your trusted representative, and the SA office declares the gold threads to be inauthentic in my presence, will I replace everything with genuine gold threads? The urgency of the telegram suggests more than a technical dispute. It marks the point at which questions of material quality, professional trust, and public reputation collided. What began as a prestigious synagogue commission was turning into a contested affair, one that today allows us to trace not only workshop practices and rivalry among artisans, but also the later role of archival documentation and scientific analysis in reconstructing this very episode. For the inauguration of the synagogue, 2 full sets of ritual textiles were commissioned. Löw's concept followed the same logic as the building, a wide selection of motifs drawn from different periods and regions of Jewish tradition. Sephardi or Oriental elements were meant to Ashkenazi features referred to Hungarian Jewish life. All the inauguration textiles were filled with botanical motifs, mirroring the decorative program of the synagogue. The original white parochet is still in Szeged, and I've shown you pictures of this and I told you how it was reconstructed. The blue parochet got lost. We know its appearance from the inauguration booklet and that it was copied from a parochet held in the National Museum of the United States, originally from Smyrna. What survived today is likely a later replacement. It is likely to be the only Sephardi-style parochet still preserved in Hungary. Here comes the exciting part. Shortly after the inauguration, the threads of the Torah mantles began to blacken. The embroidery began to become black. Thus, a question arose if the metal thread is indeed according to the quality that had been promised. Löw, too, was under pressure. He couldn't go himself, so he sent his nephew, Tibor Löw, to run around Budapest, to go to the SA office, to workshops, and to get answers. And unfortunately, this very episode became the scandal of Sternberg's career. The Sternberg Synagogue Textile Commission generated a total of 23 surviving letters between Sternberg and Löw. What emerges is the clash between a problematic contractor, who is Sternberg, and the very demanding client, Löw. Sternberg repeatedly defended himself, blaming the discoloration of the gold threads on environmental factors like storage conditions and exposure to gas. He insisted that he had never intended to deceive anyone. The correspondence, which is in dense Gothic script in German language, which was transcribed recently by János Habel, is an excellent source on how the commission was implemented and also for the drama that unfolded over times. Actual textiles by Sternberg were tested in 1903 October. Some of the results of the tests are lost, but we really wanted to know which textiles were problematic and which weren't. Luckily, we didn't have to take them apart. And there is technology today, like this Oxford instrument, which allows non-invasive material testing. The Faculty of Engineering at the University of Szeged was not only helpful, but they were also curious. After all, these textiles are also part of their city's heritage. What you can see here is these are the results. So it's Cu for copper, and what we are supposed to see is AU for gold and AG for silver, but it's apparent that those materials are not included. And this latest chemical testing means that the thread was copper and it contains 0 gold. Let me say a few more words about the garden. The synagogues rarely stand in the middle of gardens or parks, yet this is exactly what happened in Szeged, and it is by no means a coincidence. Immanuel Löw applied his knowledge to the iconography of the synagogue and the plants in the garden. It was Immanuel Löw who designed the garden, just like the path and the vegetation of the Jewish cemetery. For such a synagogue to be built, several conditions had to come together. First, there had to be space, a large plot of land which was available in abundance after the tragic flood of 1879. The area itself was still on the outskirts of the city. Then there had to be a rabbi who was also a botanist and an architect willing to collaborate closely with him. And of course, a wealthy and ambitious Jewish community to make it all possible. The garden of the Szeged New Synagogue was planted in 1902 by Károly Horváth, a local gardener. No detailed plan of the garden has survived, so we must rely on alternative sources to imagine what it once looked like. Old photographs showed the trees growing over time, though most are undated. We can reconstruct the garden from several clues: Löw's own plant catalogue and drawings, a 1908 sketch by a biology teacher at the Jewish school, and references in Löw's writings. Contemporary newspapers also report that 20 cedars were in the center, a clear symbol of Judaism and of Eretz Israel. Additionally, he planted Middle Eastern fruit trees such as walnuts and apricots near the school and placed vines, figs, and olive trees to recall biblical gardens. Evergreens along the fence framed the temple, emphasized its elevation. Besides the cedars, he planted cypresses, roses, junipers, ivy, firs, pines, and even lilacs. In 1944, the entire park was destroyed. At the time, they forced the Jewish population of the city into the ghetto. The Hungarians took away their apartments, but not their furniture. They were all packed together temporarily in the synagogue and the garden of the synagogue next to the fence. Along the fence, wooden stakes were made of wood for furniture and other valuables. After the war, the city had no money to reinstall the garden. The Szeged Synagogue was externally renovated between 2015 and 2018, and this included the reconstruction of the surrounding garden as well. This took place according to the garden plans of Immanuel Löw, whatever was available. The aim was to restore the original state of the 1930s based on the documents found in the archives of the Jewish Community of Szeged. Out of the 76 plans, which was the most that was once there, 35 met the most modern factors here because there was some change, and so right now it's only half of the original plans. To finish my lecture, I'm showing you the two graves of Immanuel Löw, also that of his wife and his daughter, also in commemoration of his grandson, Antti, who died in forced labor. So that's what you can see on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the gravestone of Lipót Bamhorn, the architect of the Szeged Synagogue. The gravestone was financed by all the Jewish communities in which he built a synagogue, and they decided to put the dome of the most beautiful synagogue that he designed. So on the top of that gravestone, you can see the dome of the Szeged New Synagogue. In Szeged, Löw united scholarship, design, and faith in a single vision. The synagogue remains his most complete work, a place where ideas took architectural form and still invite reflection today. In 1917, the botanist Árpád Degen named a rare Balkan flower, Centaurea Immanuelis Löwi, in his honor. A century later, the plant and the synagogue both preserve the same legacy, the meeting of knowledge, faith, and the living world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dora. It was a very rich presentation, and I see I am sure there will be comments and questions. So I will now open the floor, and please raise your hand or just unmute yourself. Yes, I see Annette. Would you like to say something?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Thank you for this wonderful lecture. And I came across Emanuel Löw when I examined the old synagogue Essen. And to my knowledge, the last rabbi of the old Essen synagogue, Solomon, was in contact with Löw because he admired the concept of the Szeged synagogue. And the old synagogue, Essen, had an interior decoration which, to my knowledge, borrowed a great deal from Szeged, or was influenced by the interior decoration of Szeged. So do you have any letters or findings where one could prove the contact between Essen, Solomon, and Emanuel Löw, especially regarding the windows design?
Annette, thank you so much. I think this is an excellent point, and I don't have an answer to this right now. But Morian mentioned that we have an ongoing project with the National Library of Israel, and some of his legacy ended up there. And these are right now digitized and cataloged, and these are going to be displayed. So we are collecting whatever we can find all over the world, and these are going to be displayed on the web page of the National Library of Israel. So if such letters exist, then I guess that it must be there in the National Library of Israel, and we'll be able to find it out. But I'm marking this, and thanks a lot, and I'm going to find out more about this episode, definitely.
Thank you.
Now we have a question from Eva. Did Löw have any precedence for his window iconography? It's in the chat.
Okay, I don't think that he had precedence, but what we know is that he was in quite an intensive correspondence with Max Grunwald. So, for example, who was the rabbi of Hamburg and also the chief editor of Mitteilungen der Wissenschaftlichen Judentums. So if he didn't know anything, he would ask for help or advice from Max Grunwald. So, for example, he needed a Sephardi object, and then Max Grunwald gave him suggestions. And I think this is how a Seder plate from Hamburg, which was made in the late 18th century, ended up on the window of Szeged. He had a huge network, and I think he did ask for some advice. Someone, for example, must have told him, or maybe it was his own idea, to include elements from Italy, because he didn't want to simply make it into Ashkenazi and Sephardi, but he also wanted to represent Italy. And that's how he copied the Torah ark from the Modena synagogue. And someone might have helped him. I think what we have found most so far is the help from Max Grunwald.
Thank you. And Eva, the other question, she doesn't mean the content, but the concept of having an iconography at all. And which synagogues before Szeged had iconography? It's a distinct from ornament. We can see the questions in the chat also.
Yes, I can see this. I mean, one example would be the Hamburg Seder plate. What I think how he worked was based on his huge collection of books, and he had access to the latest catalogs that were available at that time. So, for example, this Smyrna Parochet that I was talking quite lengthily was published in the catalog of the U.S. National Museum, which at that time was in Washington, and it was published in 1898. So he needed a Sephardi style parochet. He had access to the latest catalogs. For example, I think he must have had some contact with Vienna, because Vienna just recently opened the first Jewish museum in the world. And for example, there is a Chanukia on the Hanukkah window, on which you can see a Chanukia from, I think, Morocco, which is still at the Jewish Museum of Vienna. So I think that was his main concept. Catalogs, and then he also had like a huge knowledge himself. But we are doing the chapter on the windows right now, and I think we might discover some more of the method of how he worked.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
May I ask?
Sure. Please.
I think you might look up also Frau Berger, Gesellschaft zur Erforschung der jüdischen Kunstdenkmäler. This society has been founded in 1901 and published newsletters, but also Notizblätter, and they are republished. And Frau Berger became one of the most important consultant also to Solomon regarding Essen. And it was precisely about the type of building and the knowledge of plans and knowledge of artifacts from the Holy Land, which were published by Zionist organizations. And I think you might find the one or two hints also for Emanuel Löw. His name is Heinrich Frauberger.
Okay, thank you so much, Annette. And I thought of Marianne maybe asking you to connect the two of us, because I'll definitely after this.
Perfect idea.
Yeah.
Thank you so much once again.
So, yes, Annette, yes. So, Ernesto, please.
I would like to ask if there would there be some availance of the symbolic of the plants for using it today, that we could know what kind of plant stands for what kind of symbol.
Yeah, there was one slide with the plants. Again, this is something that we are doing research right now. So it's called vault. It's this triangular shaped field in the synagogue, which is above the pillars. And there are these fields. There are 4 pillars, the Torah, Avodah, Gmilut, Hasadim. You may remember that one. Above these, there are 4 vaults. And so altogether, it's 16 fields, 16 fields to be filled in. He had an idea to fill it with 16 different plants, standing for 16 different parts of the Tanakh. But someone told him that if it's 16 different plants, it doesn't look good. It just looks chaotic because it's so much up in, like, really high up there. So he made it more simple, and he chose 4 different plants. And then for the Torah, he chose a plant that is mentioned in the Torah. And that's one that he chose for one field. And then there is Nevi'im, and Nevi'im once again, and then Ktuvim. So 4 different plants, but also in all the border, figs and vine. And so basically plants that are mentioned in the Tanakh. And it's in the 1903 booklet, which is our most important source. It's available online. I'm happy to send you the link. So there is some information on that, and then we try to analyze it and go really into details, which plant is which one, and also the sources. But basically, he was a botanist. He knew all the plants that are mentioned in the Tanakh. Like, he had a huge knowledge. What he did was combining his botanist knowledge with his Talmudic knowledge, and then tell the architect and the designers to draw it accordingly. I think, is this an answer to your question?
If I want to use it, I just have to read the Dora and the prophets and so on. But there are also these thistles. There are thistles and thorns, bushes with thorns are also at the prophets. Writings of the prophets. Another question: is there any influence of this style in the direction of what we know about Jugendstil, the Sezession in Vienna?
I think, well, I'm a historian, and luckily I'm working together with a Hebraist and an art historian. So I think I'm not the best expert on that topic. But what Löw wanted to do is designing a timeless building. And he insisted that it shouldn't be according to one specific style, because styles are coming and going. And at least I can feel this, like when I go to Szeged, when I see this building, I don't really feel that it's an old building, that it has its age. So he could have, of course, they could have chosen one specific style, especially like Art Nouveau. But they chose rather to have a mixture of different styles and to make it rather into a timeless, non-specific architectural style building.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Annette she has another.
Yeah. May I make a
Sure.
comment to that?
Sure.
There was a real Zionist rage, let's put it that way, especially among German-speaking Jews, regarding the botanics of the Holy Land. And it was not just Emanuel Löw who was fascinated by the fauna and flora of the Holy Land, but also other artists in Germany, like the Horowitz brothers from Frankfurt, who they were silversmiths, and their father was the rabbi of the Börneplatz synagogue. And they created special works of art, Torah silver among others, with the plants of the Holy Land. And they especially used the style of Jugendstil to design their Torah silver. So yes, there was an impact of the Jugendstil onto this, let's say, new formation of Jewish arts and crafts, which came up with Zionism, especially Zionism. They were very proud of this movement, and it became a real hub when the Betzalel was founded. But this is, of course, later than the building of the Szeged Synagogue, but it happened shortly after. And I think Emanuel Löw was a real protagonist of this new movement.
Thanks a lot, Annette. Again, I don't want to advertise myself, but in exactly 4 weeks, I'm going to give a lecture at Bar Ilan on the Zionist aspects of the Szeged New Synagogue, because I had some colleagues coming from Bar Ilan who were first very cautious to even enter the synagogue because they were afraid that it's such a reform synagogue that it would be even anti-Zionist. And then they were really amazed to see all the hints to Jerusalem and Eretz Israel. So the building does have this. Of course, the garden, as I told you, also has all these hints to Israel. So Zionism is very much present in both the building and the garden. So I don't know the location yet, but I think you can find it in somewhere in the university. So this is going to be my next talk. And yeah, definitely, of course, not Immanuel Löw was the only one to be fascinated by Eretz Israel. Also, if I know well, I think he at least once traveled to the land of Israel, as a state of Israel didn't exist yet. So in 1904, he visited it himself, but that was after the inauguration of the synagogue. And yeah, there was this, hype, as my children would say it, which was very much present in that time.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the audience? Maybe Dora, if you have a poster for this talk, you can maybe now share if you would like. If not,
it's an Hungarian Israeli organizational production, which means I don't have anything written yet. Nothing.
I see. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's coming.
It's fine. Okay. So maybe it was mentioned about the garden. Was the gardener Jewish? The garden who worked with Löw at the beginning to design the garden. I don't remember the name.
I mentioned Árpád Horváth, who was not Jewish.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then there was also a Mühle Árpád, an Árpád Mühle, a horticulturist from Timisoara, and he was not Jewish either. But most of the artists and who carried out the work inside the synagogue, most of them were Hungarian-speaking Jewish artists, and Löw was very proud of that. What's even more is that many of them were living in Szeged. So Szeged had such a big Jewish population that it was it could even give these Jewish artisans. But when it came to the garden, as far as I know, they were not Jewish.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. So, if we don't have any other comments, I would like to thank you again, Dora. It was indeed a very rich presentation, and I am sure that there will be in your next talk in Maryland. I hope to see you again. And I would like now, if Tzvi will help me, for the next lecture will be at the end of December by Hannah Kessner about the local and transnational expression in the ketubot of the Baghdadi diaspora in the 19th century. It will be in English at the same time at the end of December. And I hope that we will see you all again. So thank you, and Hanukkah Sameach, happy Hanukkah for all, and see you. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. Hanukkah Sameach.
Hanukkah Sameach.
Thank you.